Good afternoon, YouTube. Today I'm going to be bringing you an edit tutorial for Project Diva F2, where I'm going to be showing you the basics of how to make a PV and notes, and just how to make an edit in general. I won't be showcasing every single aspect of the edit mode, like everything you can do in it, but I'll be showing you what you need to know in order to make your PV and an entire edit in general. So let's start off by going to the little reel right here, this cube. All these options down here do random, unimportant stuff, probably being able to copy and delete edit data, but the two at the top are the two most important you're going to need to know. The very first one is to create an entirely new edit, and the second is to load edit data. So if you download one off of the network that you want to edit and you know the password for it, or you want to go access one of your own and edit the data for that, you can come back here and select this option. But we're going to start off with the first, to create a new edit, and it's going to give you two options. You can either start off with basically a starting sort of tutorial layout, which is the first option, where it already gives you a stage and a module and it allows you to select a song, or if you already know what you want to make for your edit, you're probably going to want to choose the bottom option, which is basically the manual setup. It will then ask you to choose your song that you want to edit. So if you know how to speak Japanese or do complicated Pro stuff in order to get songs onto your game through the in-game Pro option, you can switch over to the tab to the right here once you add in your song, or you can do it the old-fashioned way from the first F game, where you just put it onto a memory stick and then transfer it over to your PS3. So I will just quickly select a random song here. And now the next option is, if you don't know what the BPM is for the song that you're going to be editing, you can use a analyzer in the game here, this one, where if you click on this and you press triangle, it will play the audio track, and then you can tap along to the beat using the square button for 30 seconds, and it will give you what the BPM of the song is for the number next to the song, next to the timer counter there at 30 seconds. If it seems too fast, like it's really close to 300 or it's really low to 60 for the BPM, then you might want to either consider doubling or tapping half as fast as you were before, unless it seems like a very high-paced song or a very slow song. So I'll quickly figure out what the BPM of this song is here by playing the audio track and then tapping along to it. Start tapping at any point. It doesn't have to be right at the beginning of the song. So if there's a part later on that you want to tap to, you can wait until that part pops up. And if at any point you want to reset your counter, you can just go ahead and press X on it, and it will reset back to 30, and then you can wait until you get to another point in the song that you want to start by tapping the X again. I did not choose a very complicated audio track, so let me try an easier one. Find the BPM too. See that I'm tapping along and it's showing up as about 90 or 91, but it seems like a rather fast-paced song, so I guess the BPM should be somewhere around 180, which is a very good example of why you want to double how fast you're tapping in a case like this. So quick cancel back out of the timer, press twice as fast. So you can see it's a pretty solid 180 BPM here. So yeah, 180 is our BPM for this song. Then after you figure out what the BPM is, or if you already know what the song's BPM is that you have, you can go up to the top, either manually shift it back and forth, left and right, which can be a little tedious because it's kind of hard to get the exact number that you want this way. So the easier thing to do is just press the circle button, and then you can manually type in what BPM that you want. You can only go as low as 60 and as high as 300 though, so if your numbers go over or below that, you're either going to have to double how fast you're pressing, or press about half as fast as you were before. And you can just leave the bars at the bottom here at 4. And after you're done there, you're going to want to go to the bottom, click the large button to move on, and then it will allow you to select your stage. You can preview the stage with the triangle button. Now the actual stages themselves at the beginning are going to have the ones from the first F, and then below those, a little further down, you're going to have the ones that are new exclusively to F2, somewhere around here. And about 1/3 of the way down, you're actually going to get to the end of like all the stages, and for like the last 2/3, you're just going to have a bunch of pictures. Starting right about here, this is the last actual stage. And then everything below that is just backgrounds, like colors or pictures, like the art from the games. So you just choose a random stage. And then finally, the last thing you do before it brings you directly into the editor is going to be your modules. So you can move over to the smaller button to the right. You can choose up to 3 modules and the accessories that you want with them, right in here. And you also have the option of changing your skin if you don't like the default. So then you can use any of the others. I don't think, however, it gives you the option to use the extra skins that you can download in the PSN store. So you're stuck with just what you can buy in-game. And I guess you can also go to the shop here if there's a module that you want to buy in the store that you don't have yet. Then after that, you can back out of that menu, head back to this one, and you press the larger button in order to confirm again, and then it will bring you directly into the editor. So then this is where you do all the actual PV and note making. But just for time's sake, I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to go load up one of my own edits that already has stuff in it, just so it's easier to show you rather than having to start from scratch. So the second option below that, the one to load edit data, you can just search through all the ones that you have in your collection that you've downloaded. Now if it's one of the edits that you made yourself, it's not going to ask for a password once you load it up. However, if there's another edit that you download offline and you do know the password for it, it's going to ask you for that password the first time that you go into the edit. But if you write over top of the edit after that and save on top of it, it won't ask you for the edit password the next time you go back in. So I think the quickest area to start off here in the beginning would just to be the start menu. If you select start from here, you have a variety of options that you can do for the PV itself. The first one will allow you to test play your edit. You can either select the first option, which will play the edit from the very beginning, or the option below that, which will start from the first bar that you're currently selected on. For example, if I were to select the first one, it would just play it right from the beginning of the edit. However, if I was to move all the way somewhere to the middle of the edit, like right here, and then in this, you can see in the upper corner right over here, it says 26, which is the current bar for the edit that you're making. And if anywhere in here really, I just stop, like say right here, and then I press the start menu, I go over here, and I tell it to start from the first bar. It's actually going to play from the beginning of 26 here, and any notes that are before my red cursor won't be shown, but the ones that are like right against it, the one that it's right on top of here, that's where the notes are going to start appearing, but it's going to start playing all the way from the 26th bar over here. And then this will be the first note that shows up when I start playing. For example. You can either play from the beginning of the edit, or if there's a certain part that you want to test play, you can start just by moving your cursor over to it in order to save lots of time. Another handy thing that you can do once you're in here, depending on, it doesn't really matter which of these options you choose, but while you're test playing the edit, you can press the select button while the edit is playing in order to bring up some statistics and stuff that tell you about the song. For example, if you're like test playing through it and then you spot an error that you want to go back and fix, except you don't know the notes well enough in order to know where it is, like in the actual layout for all the notes, you can bring up this menu right here, and then it will tell you things like how many seconds it is into the song and what bar you're starting at, like the little number that's going from 11 and then 12 right there. That's what bar it's on. And then the numbers all the way at the bottom are like the milliseconds and seconds for your song. And then you can just press select back and forth to toggle it on and off. And it should be there the next time that you test play it, depending on what you left it on last. Now the option right below that is pretty much the same as the first, except that instead of playing the entire song, it's just going to play the PV for you. So you can either choose to play it from the beginning, or you can just play it from whatever bar that you start at. Pretty much the same thing as the other one, except you play it without the notes, so you can look at the PV directly. Option below that allows you to toggle certain options, certain things that you can edit in the actual song on and off, in case, let's say, you've already done everything with a certain character that you want. You can go ahead and just switch this over to off, and then when you go back to the actual song, you won't see the option to edit anything for them. Switch that to off. And now you can see the option for first player here is just gone. In order to access the menu quicker, if you know there's something you're not going to edit, then it might just save you time to turn that off. Option right below that allows you to go ahead and change your modules. Say if you're in the middle of making a song, and then you decide you don't want this module for like character 1, you found another one that you think might work a lot better, you can just go ahead and go here, select the first option, click yes here, and then it will allow you to change your modules and skin for the song. the option right below this does for the on and off, I'm not actually sure, but I've never really needed to figure out what it does, so it's probably not something that important. One below that, marked by SE for the beginning of the name, stands for sound effects, so it just allows you to change whatever you want all your notes to sound like. You can preview it by pressing triangle above whatever sound you currently have selected. All the notes just like you can normally in the actual official songs. Option below that, I believe, I actually forget what this one does. Okay, yes, this is another one that I haven't used. However, if I had to take a guess, I'm pretty sure this is actually the note import, which was similar to the first Project Diva F, where you can bring in notes from another edit that you have. So if you have like two separate people working on the same edit, or you make one edit without a PV in the background in just the notes, and then you decide later on that you want to make a PV for it, except you do that in a separate file, you can go ahead and import the notes from the old one using this option here by selecting another edit. Or if two separate people work on the edit, someone can send you the notes or you send them the PV, and then they can use this in order to load the notes. Now the option below that, which I'm not going to click on right now, is actually the password for your edit, because unlike the first F2 requires all edits that you make to have a password. And so by selecting this option, once you click on it, it will show you the password that you have enabled for your edit. And if, let's say, it's a password that you don't like it's a really confusing pattern of numbers, there will actually be a button right below it that you can click on in order to change your password. And it's just, you can't select exactly what you want. However, it's a combination of numbers, and every time you click the button, it just randomly generates a new one. So you can do that as many times as you like until you find a password that you like and you want to keep. The option below that allows you to input all your info for the actual title and stuff of the song. So the very first one allows you to set the title for your edit. One below that, I believe, is for the producer of the song. So in this case, I put bass because, that's the name that I go by online. The one below that, third option, is for the artist, who made the song. One right below that is the description that you can set for the actual song that pops up next to the modules right before you begin to play the game, where you can select button sounds and stuff. And the very last option allows you to set the start difficulty for the song, which defaults out at 0.5 star. The option below that is another one that I have not yet had to use. However, I believe this is actually just a quicker way of switching between the different edits that you have. However, I usually just go back to the main menu after saving and then selecting it from there. I've never used it in here just because it has a warning, which I'm pretty sure is just telling you that if you load another save data, the current one that you're working on, anything that you haven't saved will be lost. But I've just always taken the longer way around. Now the final two options that we have at the bottom here are the two most important ones. The first one, right above the bottom, is the save feature. So if you click on this one here, it will allow you to save your data. You can either save it over top of the old one that you had, or make a new data for it. And the one right below that allows you to cancel out of edit mode. If you click on that and then select yes, it will leave and send you back to the main edit mode menu. However, you want to be careful when you do this and make sure that you save before it if you did anything that's important and you want to keep, because once you leave, anything that you haven't saved will be lost. So always make sure you save beforehand. That's pretty much all you can do for the main menu. So now I'll talk about the actual edit making itself. Well, actually, I'll show you one more thing that you can do before we go into the specifics here. No matter where you are, which of these boxes that you're selected over, You can always press the square button as long as you're not in the middle of creating something by pressing square, and then it will give you a series of different options which will slightly vary depending on what you're currently hovering over. However, for the most part they remain the same. The first two options are undo, the first one, and redo, which the first F also didn't have, which is a very nice thing just in case you delete a note or a very complicated feature that took you a long time to create. You can just go ahead and go here and then undo that without having to create the thing again. Or let's say you undo a little too far back into your edit and there's something that you want to redo, you can select the option right below that. Now the two right below that will change depending on what you're currently hovered over. If it's over an option like this or here, actually I'm pretty sure this applies for everything except notes. Depending on what you're hovered over, you can select the first option here, which is delete. Now I can't delete this one because it's the only stage I have selected, otherwise there wouldn't be anything for the characters to be on. But if I had something else selected, like another camera angle somewhere over here, or just like a random effect, it would give me the options right here. The first one here will delete whatever I have selected, the one right below it will move whatever I have selected, and the third one will copy whatever I have selected. So I can copy that effect and paste it somewhere else just by pressing circle. And those are pretty much the most important options that you're going to use in this menu. The other ones you won't be using quite as much, however, I suppose I can go through the ones that I know, just for your knowledge. I know the longest one down here, like the fourth one up, allows you to create the thumbnail for your edit. So if you don't have one set already, you can just scroll to where you want in the edit, and what you see in the upper corner at the point that you press circle is what's going to be saved as the actual thumbnail. However, the text or subtitles at the bottom won't be shown. I'm pretty sure you can delete the thumbnail, I think, by pressing triangle, I suppose. Okay, yeah, that deletes your thumbnail, and then pressing circle will either create one or overwrite the one that you already have. I'm pretty sure the options below that will jump back and forth between any markers that you have set in the upper corner. I'll go ahead and go into what markers are a little later on, once I go through more of the finer details of the edit. And I'm not really sure what the bottom edit does, or what the option all the way at the bottom, or these three right here. Oh yeah, this is about templates and stuff that you can load in. I guess that allows you to either load or overwrite template data, which is also something I will get into more a little later. I suppose I'll start from the very beginning, which is where you're going to want to start before you begin your edit, because one of the most important things that you want to make sure of before you actually start making your edit, either for the PV or the actual notes, is that the MP3 is synced up correctly with the beat, with like the bars and stuff that you have set. Because once you download your MP3 and you put it into the game, it's probably not going to line up perfectly for the notes here. Like if we head all the way over to the end, and then we listen by doing a preview after hovering over the notes here, you can hear that the notes are perfectly synced up with the music. However, when you load in your audio file, that's probably not going to be the case. Like the audio is going to be a little ahead of where you want the note to be, or it's going to be a little behind. It's not going to perfectly line up to one of these spots here. So this is how you get the audio to actually line up. If you select the very top option, you're going to have three different options. The very first one, if you select it, will allow you to input markers, which is what I was talking about before, where if you scroll anywhere, like on your timeline, I guess is what we'll call it, for where you can input everything for the edit, If you click on any random spot once or multiple times, it will create a marker, which is like a special part that you can just mark in the PV so that you like know that's a special spot for something that you can come back to later. And if you click on it more than that, it will change different colors so you can have different groups and allows you to sort them more efficiently if you have like a very complicated edit that you're working on. And if you press it enough, it'll just disappear. But then you can go ahead and use the other options in here to jump between them like really quickly if you don't feel like moving back and forth across the edit mode. The second option below that is going to be the start time for your audio. You're going to either increase the time that it takes to start your MP3 file or delay the time and to make it start sooner. If you move the number forward from here, if you like press to the left, if you press to the left, it's going to make the audio file marker for the beginning here. There should be an S all the way at the start. That S is going to move to the right. The more that you move this to the left, and the more that you move the cursor to the right, it's actually going to move the audio to the left. But if you increase the time further than 0, just like the default 0, you're not actually going to see how far it moves back. It's just going to stay all the way against the corner of the screen. So like for example, if we go back here to where the audio file started again, give you a couple seconds to listen to it here. Just see that the notes are lined up. So as you can see, for the most part, the notes are synced up pretty well with the beat. Now, however, if we go back to where I started for the start time audio marker, and let's just say, let's move that all the way back to 0 where it was before, because right now I have it so that the audio starts a little later than it usually would. About 135 back. So if I set that back to the default 0, and then we listen to it again. Also, one quick important thing to point out is, like for the BPM that we made earlier, if we pretty much for any numerical value inside the edit mode, just about like anything that requires you to use numbers, if it's too tedious or it's too difficult in order to set the exact number that you want by moving left or right or up and down, for most of them you can just press circle over top of whatever number it is, and then you can input it manually like this, which can either make things a lot quicker if you have to switch to a very specific number. So I'm just going to set this all the way to 0. Save that. And now if we listen to the audio again, all the way here, the audio should start a lot sooner than the actual notes do. Now, as you can see, the notes are much further behind than they actually used to be. And say if we had increased that value past 135 where it had been before, like really far back, like a couple seconds maybe, and then we go here, the notes are going to be a lot sooner than the actual audio will. So the easiest way to do this in order to sync up your audio just right to what you want is simply just to place one or maybe a couple notes where you want the audio to begin or you want the very first beat to land, and then just either increase or decrease the value, whichever one you need. Like make the audio start later or make it start sooner, and just increase or decrease the value slowly or largely, like however far you need, until it lines up directly with the beat. Like whenever you preview it by pressing the triangle button, until that little tap happens right on the beat where you want it. And then after that you can lay out the rest of your notes or work on the PV knowing that everything's like lined up correctly. When making your edit, that's probably the very first thing that you're actually going to want to do. A couple other quick things about the main menu here. Like I've already shown you a few times, you can preview both the edit and the notes that you have going if you press the triangle button, like so. And then one of the other things you can do if you want to increase the size for the PV in the upper corner, another thing you can do is to press the L1 button, and that'll shrink it so that you can only see one of the timeline things in the bottom corner that you can shift between and still edit, but now you have the PV a lot larger in the upper corner there. However, the bottom part of it is cut off from the timeline in the bottom corner, so if you want to preview the entire PV without actually going into the menu and selecting it here, you can, once you're in this menu, if you press the R1 button instead of the L1 button, it will get rid of the menu there, and then you can just press triangle to preview the entire thing so that you can see the subtitles and the very bottom of the PV. Then you can just press R1 again to bring it back up, and L1 to go back to the previous menu where you can see all the different editing options. And also, while you're in this menu, you can still make your edit changes and stuff. It's just that for a few different things, instead of like in the corner where they would appear in the box right there, they'll actually appear on screen with like a clear background. So if we just like set one here, yeah, you'll still be able to edit stuff basically, but now like the little menu right there is going to be transparent. Now for the third option that you can do for the top bar, which you're probably going to want to do once you finish creating the edit play thing entirely, is all the way, if we head to the end of the edit, this E right here is the end marker for when the song actually ends. So like say if you make your entire PV and then you save it off and you don't place this here, you're not going to get to your results screen after the actual song is over. That's what the end marker is for. It's just going to end the song and then bring up the results for whatever you've done. So once your entire PV is done, you're going to want to give it a couple seconds. Like I think a bar or two is how many it needs. Because if you place it too close to the end of the edit, it's actually going to cut off some of the notes that you have placed. I suppose for whatever reason it like needs a little bit of time after the last note that you place. So you're going to want to place it a little bit past that. Find the time that you want, and then if you select the very bottom third option, which has PV on it, and wherever you are selected currently on the menu, that's where it's going to place the marker. So that way you can just shift it back and forth. But I don't think that once you've placed it, you can actually remove it. So you're just going to have to move it manually like that. So once it's placed, you can't go back and remove it. Now for the PV part of the actual edit, below that, you're going to have, depending on how many modules, either 1 to 3 of these, which will say 1P, 2P, and 3P, depending on how many modules. For this one I have 2 modules, so I have 2 options. If you open up them, they will have more specific bars that you can use to edit the movements that the character is currently doing. which I'll go ahead and move a little further on here and showcase that. The very first option will change the character visibility. So depending on where you place this stuff in the menu, will determine when the character becomes visible or invisible. Like so. Option below that, depending on any accessories that they currently have on, like any crowns or glasses. Like in this case, the ring module has bat wings, a pair of glasses, and a platinum crown. So if I were to switch any of these around, that would turn off their visibility or make it so she didn't have the module anymore, or the accessory. So now if I scroll back to before this, you can see in the upper corner she still has her crown, but once it passes this mark here, it becomes invisible, along with her wings. Another thing about the menu, I think one of the last things I forgot to mention earlier, is that you can zoom in into or out of the timeline if you want to get across to the end quicker by taking the right joystick and either pushing that in or out. That will either zoom in or zoom out of the edit. And if you zoom out too far to where like you can't see specific details, then little boxes like that will represent that in that specific area you have stuff set, like modules or camera angles or whatever you have selected. That way you know where you have stuff placed and you don't. This allows you to navigate through the edit quicker. And I'm pretty sure as far as the actual edit goes, or navigating the menu here, that's all there is. You can preview by using the square or the triangle. The square brings up that other menu. Circle just selects for whatever bar you have selected currently. Start brings up the menu. Select doesn't do anything currently. Oh, that actually shows you the tutorial, but that's not really helpful unless you know how to read Japanese. But if you knew how to read Japanese, then you probably wouldn't be watching this video. It just tells you about everything you can do here. Then the right joystick zooms in and out, and the left one moves back and forth across the timeline. The option below that for the accessories determines whether or not you can see the character's shadow, although that's a rather minor detail, so I'm not really sure when you would need to turn off the shadow, but hey, if you want to do that, the option is there. Option below that will change the position of the character or the angle that they are currently facing. So once you select that, it will either give you the option to choose a default selection, and you can use triangle again to preview the different ones that they give you, I believe. Actually, no, I guess you can't do that for default. You can't do that for character placements. But some of these will like make the characters slide from left to right, or make them rotate around in a certain fashion. I've never really used those before. I just used the manual, which is the option below that, which allows you to set the first position that you want them to be at, change the degree of rotation down here at the bottom. You can change position left to right, you can make them fall down, but if you bring them up too high, you can't actually raise them any higher than 0, so it will only go down like that. They won't actually go any higher than they already are. And then the option finally below that will copy the last position that you have. So if you confirm that, it will give you the option either below to change the length of the current movement. So like starting from 18 and going all the way to 19 in 1 second, that's how far the character is going to move, depending on where you've placed the markers to be. But if you extend the time by like a couple seconds, it will take them longer in order to get to that corner. The option above that will allow you to edit the markers. You just keep selecting the first option. It will allow you to change the first marker in order to make them sink like down further into the floor. And if you select the one right below that after you select the first option, that will allow you to edit the end of the marker right here. See, and then if you select this one, that will set it to the previous setting so that she'll be a little bit lower in the ground like she was before. But if I just leave it there, and then we move back here and preview it, we'll see that she jumps to the bottom, and then slowly rises back up to the floor. But say if I take the very last option here, and then shrink it really low, she will jump back up very quickly. So that changes how long you want the actual animation to take. So that, for example, allows me to make Kaito run across the screen very fast at the beginning here, by quickly making his position from the left side of the screen to the right and back. Option below that allows you to change the movement that the character is currently engaging in, so if they're spinning or like texting on a phone, or they're laying down or running around. This is one of the biggest options for the edit mode. First one will, hang on, if you just start randomly on the timeline, you select it, and then it will allow you to choose any of the animations that they currently have here. You can press the triangle button in order to preview whatever animation it is, and you can use the left stick in order to move the camera around so that you see what they look like from different angles, and then you can use the right one to zoom in and out, get closer to the character. Allows for a little bit more movement. Well, things that are highlighted in yellow basically just signify like animations that you've already chosen. Now once you select an option, you have a couple different things you can do to it. You can either keep it at the default speed that it was at, or if you want the character to do the animation slower, you can slow down the speed a lot. Or if you want them to perform the animation faster, up to 300%, you can just move over here, like that. Like the other options, you have the ability to input the number yourself, like you can do for pretty much anything here. This, I believe, this is the start time for the animation. So like say if instead of you wanting them to, well, let's find an easier animation to show this actually. Okay, so for example, when you start off this animation, she does that little thing with her hands and starts from the bottom and then slowly stands up. If you want her to start from the top and then sink down to the ground, you can increase this value until she's all the way up there, and then just start the animation from here. So it basically tells like the game or whatever when you want them to start the animation. So if you want them to start it later than before. And then the option right below that is the transition, so if they're in the middle of like another animation that you're having them do, depending on like how many seconds long this is, depends on how many seconds it will take them to stop the other animation they were doing and then start the one that you have currently selected. I've never really used the transition one though, just because it seems a little complicated to use. So if you've already selected an animation that you want and then you want to go back and edit something about it, like the start time or the speed, when you select it, the first option will allow you to change the animation, or the one below it will allow you to edit something about it, like the speed, timing, etc. Option below that this one allows you to change what objects that they have in their hand currently. So right now she has a leak. So if you just press triangle to preview that, you can see what she'll have in her hand at the time, and which hand. Option below that will change the facial features of the character. So like for example, this will change the position of the eyes and the eyebrows, depending or not whether they have their eyes open or closed. Some of these will actually change like how much their eyes squint or how open they are. But she has her eyes closed currently, so you can't really see that. So I'll back over here to where you can see her eyes. Some of them, they're a little more squeezed together than others. Option right below that will change a couple things about their face. Like the first one just makes it blank, and these will add tears, which you can't see because her glasses are in the way. Ones below that will add like little fuzziness to her cheeks. A few things like that. One right below that will change where her eyes are looking, which you can see without having to use preview. Option right below that shows how open or closed their eyes currently are. So this one right here, not actually sure what this does. However, the option below it allows you to change how open or closed you want their eyes to be. And then the option below that shows how long you want it to take to get to that position. So like say if I just had this set at 100% to make her eyes 100% closed, and I had this set directly at 0, her eyes would just snap from being directly open to being directly closed. So if you want it to seem more like a blink, then you have to give it like a little bit of time, which usually isn't a lot. It's usually only like a couple milliseconds here, like 1 or 2, in order for her to close her eyes. And then you can place another one a couple seconds after that for her, this back at 100%, and then set this at like 2 again, and then it will seem like a normal blink. That's for the first option. Never used it, don't know what it does. A moment while I get my cat off of my chair so she doesn't rip it up. Option right below how either open or closed you want their eyes, you're going to have her hand movement. So say if she doesn't have like an object in her hand at the moment, but you want it to be shaped a little differently, you can go ahead and do that like this. Either make her hold out hands, like fingers, have her roll her hand up. You can get to do things like that, and similar to the other option, once you select it, you can go ahead and change the transition effect, so how long it takes her hand to form that pattern. Option below that is for the opposite hand, her right hand. Option below that is for her mouth, so it changes whether she's grinning or not. The first few that are here are like vowels. The first few, so if you want it to make it look like she's singing along to the song, then these are the ones that you're going to want to use in the beginning here. You also have transition effects for these as well, so it can either snap directly to that opening or whatever, so that it snaps directly from her having a closed mouth to her having an open mouth, or you can make it so that it takes a little while. Like currently her mouth is closed, and then I choose a random one here without any effect to it. It just snaps directly to being open. Or if I give it a little bit of time, like this, her mouth will open up gradually. It takes a little while for her mouth to open up. And if you get very in-depth with the lip movements like that, you can actually get it to sync up pretty well. Like right here I have a couple, as you can see, already placed. So if you manage to get the transition times set up correctly and place them right, you can actually get it to sync up to the audio really well. I am pretty sure that the OBS, which I'm currently using, isn't going to sync up the audio correctly once I actually finish making this video, but just in case it does, I'll go ahead and play it. Oh yeah, it's not going to be synced up anyway because I changed the start time of the audio earlier. So let me fix that real quick. Another thing to note, if you're zoomed out too far, it's not going to let you edit anything. So you're going to have to zoom in more. Probably didn't seem synced up due to OBS not having the audio synced up right, but it's actually pretty close. So if we head down more, okay, so yes, the lip syncing that I did right there, that's the final option for the customization that you can do for each individual character. So you have the mouth movements, what shape you want her hands to be, what objects you want in her hands, how open or closed you want her eyes to be, facial features, like the size of her eyes and stuff, their movements, accessories. So there's a lot you can do for each individual character. And under each of these options, depending on whether you have one module or you have more, if you open up the drop-down menu for each of them, you're going to have the exact same options. It's just going to be for the other character, which is where most of the complicated stuff is. But then you have a couple other smaller options. The one right below that, I believe, is for the stage that you can change. Yeah, so if you want to have like multiple stages, you can go ahead and, like for the first one that I started off with here, this was the one from remote controller from the first Project Diva F. But then as I moved down here, I changed back to the World is Mine stage. So it allows you to choose a new one. However, you can only use a few different stages, because if you look at the very top of the screen, you have two little bars which say 39%, and 84%. The one that says 84 is basically data for your PV, so whenever you add in character movements, like different actions that you have them perform, the more that you choose, the more data that's going to take up. Like if you use multiple animations over and over again, it's still going to take up space, but it's not going to take up as much space as it would have taken up if you'd used a new one. So sometimes if you're running low, like I am now at 84%, it might be a good idea to try and reuse like older animations that you've already done. Because once it reaches 100%, then you can't put any more like data into your PV as far as character movements go. And certain stages take up lots and lots of space. So as you can see, I try and select one right here and it gives me an error message. That's because it's too big and I don't have enough space left for my PV in order to put that in there. However, if I were to go like backwards and choose a picture, that's not going to take up as much space as a actual stage would. So that's why it allows me to put that in there. And the other one in the other corner is just the space for the effects that you have, like the transitions, which I'll also be discussing more once I get there. Another cool option that you can do with stages that you didn't have in the older Project Diva F games, I don't think, is that once you choose your stage, you can actually go back and edit it and choose different filters that you want to be present like on the stage. So if you don't want to see just the stage, like you want to be all grayed out, you can come back here and choose different color filters in order to get the stage to look different, which will stay the same depending on whether or not you put extra effects on top of it. You can get some pretty cool looking effects. And same thing with like the stages as with the actual modules for the characters. If you use the same one over and over again, like you switch between two, it will take up more space. However, it won't take up as much space as if you'd used an entirely new stage. See, like I've only used two. I've used this one for when I use him to represent the singer, and then this one, The World Is Mine, for when Rin moves around. So I switched between them a couple times, which took up a lot of space. However, if every time I changed it, I used an entirely like new stage, then I probably wouldn't have been able to. I probably would have gone over 84 and like past 100%, and I wouldn't have been able to put in that many stages as I did changed. So if you're going to do a very intricate and in-depth PV, then you really have to watch those numbers up at the top. But if you're like making a notes-only PV, or it's not going to be that big of a PV, then you don't have to worry too much about running out of space. Like if you're only using one stage, you've only got one character, because the more characters that you use, that's also going to fill up more space as well once you start off your edit. The more stuff that you have, the more data it takes up. Now, despite what the characters are doing and how they're moving around the stage, the option right here is probably going to be the second most important one, according to PV, for not the actual notes. This is going to be the camera angles, which are pretty difficult to explain overall, so I'm just going to keep this as simple as I can think of. You can start off. This basically just like tells the camera where to point around the stage. So you can either choose the first option that pops up, which is for default camera angles, which can really help if you're sort of a noob to edit making and you just want to get a feel for how the camera angles work and everything. You can preview by pressing triangle. The first few here will just like give it a default placement, but some of the ones below that will allow the camera to like zoom in or out or move around the stage in really complicated ways. And the one right below that is the manual one. You can just adjust the value down at the bottom for the focus point, which is going to be the point that the camera is looking at. So that's going to sink it down into the floor. That's going to rise it up. You can move it back and forth and stuff. And then you can either use the options up here in order to adjust how close or far you want the camera to be, or you can actually just use the joysticks in order to move the camera around, like the one to your left allows you to move it around the focus point, and then the one to the left allows you to zoom in and out. So if you just like want one camera angle, you can do that. But say like if you want to do really complicated ones, like where you have the camera move around, if you select it again like we had before for the character movement, the bottom option will allow you to change the time that the camera angle is. The one above that will allow you to do things with the actual camera itself. The first one right here will allow you to edit different focus points that the camera has. So once you select that, you can move left or right with the D-pad in order to select which camera angle you want to edit. So if we go edit the angle at the end, I can set a new location for the focus point and have it look somewhere else. And then over time, like in the area right here, the camera is going to move from a point A to point B, basically. Now, if you're a really in-depth camera angle user, which I'm not really, I basically just know how to do simple switches like that, you can actually go in and choose the option below the one to edit the camera angles, which will allow you to put another point in. So say if I put one in the middle right here, and I adjust that up or something, the camera angle is going to start from this point, and then it's going to pass through this point before it travels all the way to this one over here. So if you're really good at cameras, you can make it do some really interesting and complicated things, like you can make the camera shake around. Not something I'm going to go into because I'm a noob when it comes to camera angles. But again, you can like change the time of the camera angle in order to make it last a lot longer. To slow down, similar to how the character position worked. And then let's say you do put one of those in and you want to delete it. The third option, as you can see, is now highlighted, and that will allow you to delete one of the camera angles that you have set. It won't allow you to delete the ones at the end, but any that you placed in the middle you can delete, and it will no longer pass through those points. Option below that, you're going to have the effects, I believe, yes. This allows you to put effects over the video that you're currently doing, like pedals, or fire, or static. But there's lots and lots of different effects you can choose, but to figure out what they are, you're basically just going to have to go through and look at them all yourself. But once you select them, you can change the speed that they run at. And you, similar to how the character animation worked, you can adjust how far into the effect that you want it to start. Because some of these effects don't like loop. They're just like one single effect. See if I can find one like that. Yeah, see, like this one right here, it starts off as a tiny dot and then explodes into a bunch of color. If you don't want to see that dot, you just want it to instantly be color, you can adjust the start time using this right here, and it'll show you on screen where it's going to start, like right here, and then I can make it run super fast by increasing it to like 200% speed. Or I can slow it down super slow, if that's what I want. Then you can confirm your changes. And you have a little effect bar there that tells you that's when the effect starts. Now the option below that is another new one that they have for f-second, which basically allows you to create effects over top of these previous effects. However, it's only color transitions. So like inside this option here for the first effects, you have the option in order to make, like, I'll go ahead and show you once I find it. You can either have it fade into a certain color or fade out from a certain color. Like the one right here, makes the screen fade into a white color, and the one below it makes it fade out from the white. And the ones below that just do it for black and white, and I'm pretty sure further on down here you have the option to do that for, yeah, the other colors. However, these are handled by speed and transition, like how far in you want the color to start. But something you'll notice about this is that you can't actually keep it at a certain color. Like once you start up the effect, it's going to run through the entire thing. But if you want to give the screen a certain tint, like a little bit of pink or a little bit of blue or black to it, you can select the option right below that, and then you'll have the option for lots of colors to either fade in to white, fade out from white, or black, or blue, or red. All the colors right here. However, what's interesting about this is that you can choose the effect by milliseconds, I'm pretty sure, is what this represents. And the option below that will adjust the start time. Oh, no. This is the speed. This is how fast the edit, or how fast like the transition is going to take effect. And the one below that shows you where it's going to start. So if I want the screen to be a little colorful, once it starts fading, I just want it to snap straight to a color. Hang on. Okay, red right here. So if I start off and I just preview it right now, it's going to snap straight to red once it gets to this point, and then it's going to fade out. However, if I increase this value at the top, that's going to change when it's going to start. So instead of starting on a completely red screen, it will start where you can see a little bit of the color. Like so, if I back up and show you. It just sort of creates a small puff of red. Now if I go back into edit, like the top one will allow me to select the color again, which you can do for pretty much any of the options here. Like if you select something you already have, you'll have two options. The one below it allows you to edit features about it, and then the one above you allows you to select a new feature, with the exception of like camera angles. That allows you to change the size and different things about them. But if we go back and we edit this again, this one at the bottom will increase the time, similar to the percentage for the other effect that we had. So if we want it to take longer to completely fade away, we can increase that to a really large value. So it fades away very, very slowly. Back to a new clean screen. Or one of the more interesting things about this feature, which I like a lot, is if you want the stuff on screen to have this specific tint, but you don't want it to fade away, you can choose this speed and set it all the way back to 0. So this red tint that it's currently at is going to stay on screen the entire time until you create another effect, setting it back to clear. And you can change how much of a tint you want. And then before we get to the actual notes for the song, we have one more option, which is the ability to make the subtitles in the bottom of the PV down there. They're pretty easy to understand. You just start off anywhere where you want the subtitles to begin. You can input characters if you know like what you want to say in Japanese, or if you don't, you can just keep pressing select until it switches to the English keyboard. You put in whatever you want. Then once you type in your text, you can choose the option, the one right above the one from the bottom, right here, which will allow you to change the length that you want it to be on screen. So you can see over there. Now you can change the color of the text by choosing the very bottom one. So now it's like a red instead of white like it was before. the top option will allow you to edit the text that you currently have. And then finally the option right below that will allow you to load palette data. Which I suppose I should go over this quickly, since I really didn't discuss this earlier, since I really didn't understand it too much myself. But for most of the things that you have here, let's say there's like an effect that you use very frequently, like maybe an animation for the character. Like, let's just choose something at random here. But there's an animation that you really like to use, and you select that. Then once you bring up this menu, you can press the square button, I believe, alright. Oh, no, that's not how you do it. That's what the option is for in the square menu. If you select something, like an animation right here, you press the square button, you scroll down. I'm pretty sure it's one of these two options right here. You can see I've got something random up in the corner here, and then I have, like, say, no data. You can actually save this animation either on top of an old one or in a new slot by selecting it. Then you can, yes. Now it's going to overwrite the one I currently have, and you can name it whatever you want. But now if you go to another spot, and then you back out of here, and you go to another spot on this timeline, and then you go ahead and, I believe, select the option right below it, which is the load palette data, and then it will allow you to load different like animations that you have saved. So say there's only like 3 or 4 you want to use, you can go and save them in here, and then go to the points on the line where you want to use them, and just take them from here rather than zooming through like the 200 plus animations that they have for you to use. No, I don't want to rename that. Okay, maybe I don't know how to actually place one of them down. I guess that second option allows you to delete it. I'm not sure. Just don't worry about palettes. They're really confusing and stuff. That's something you can do if you understand Japanese. I just don't use palettes. They're too confusing. I mean, because edit data is like already confusing enough as it is. I don't need to worry about palettes and stuff like that. I can wait till they westernize the game for that. So yeah, you can rename it. You can load, like, I guess, palette data that you already have saved, but I don't even know how to create it to begin with, so don't really worry about that. That option allows you to resize it or change how long you want it to be on screen, and the one below that changes the color. And that's pretty much everything you can do as far as making the PV. Now for the actual notes of the song that you can do. The first option here, which you can see is green compared to the other stuff before it. Say you start up your song, but then you find out that your BPM is actually wrong. You can go ahead and select the first option here. Select BPM, and then you can change the value for it. Or say you have like multiple BPMs within a song, like the BPM changes halfway through, and you're, I guess, good enough in order to know exactly where that BPM changes. You can head down to wherever you want, and then choose like anywhere along here to create a new BPM change, and adjust it. and then you can create a new one at the beginning of a new bar. However, if you have like a very complicated BPM change, then you might have to adjust the length of the current bar that you have, which if I do that right now, that's just going to screw up all of my notes, so I'm not going to confirm that, because every time you change the bars, that really messes up any notes that you have after it. So before you make all the notes, you want to make sure that you have your BPM changes lined up right. That's just something very complicated. Like I'll actually load up another edit data, I think a little later on, that has lots of complicated note changes within it in order to show you. Like sometimes you have to change the size of the bars and put lots of BPM changes in, depending on how complicated the song is. Option right below that is for just the notes. So you can, if I choose the first option here, and choose the first option again, it will allow me to go in and change the shape of notes, or to place new notes down. And if you tap a note that you already have, it will change it to an arrow. So you can press it twice in order to make it an arrow. If you want to make a hold note, you're going to want to hold down a current button and then move your left joystick to wherever you want the hold note to end, and then click again. If you want to make a star note, you're going to flick the right joystick, or if you want to make link stars, then you're going to want to hold down the L1 button while you swipe over a certain location. And then you can just go back and add in your link stars wherever you want them. And in order to get rid of them, you have to hold down the L button again, the L1 button. And oh yeah, if you want it to be a double star, then you just flick the right joystick twice. Now for some of the more in-depth options that you can do for the notes, if you select the first option again, but then you go down and you click on the thing that has a 3, you can add in certain things. Like I'll go ahead and show you a little further down here. You'll add in this white space to the bar where you can place the notes, which allows you to place them at different positions compared to where you would have been able to place them before. Like certain songs will have notes that sound a little strange, maybe compared to the rest of the beat. And if that's the case, then you probably want to use this, which I think is like called fourth notes and eighth notes, I'm pretty sure. But the first option allows you to place an area where you can place fourth notes, and the one below that allows you to place eighth notes. The eighth notes one is like a lot smaller, and then you can place notes that are really close together. Because if we listen to this, it sounds a little stranger compared to the rhythm of the rest of the song. So say if you have some notes that you have lined up and they don't sound quite right, then you might want to try that, adding in some of this. And then finally, the third option you can do after you select the first one allows you to place notes in manually while the song is running. But usually human error can be a really bad factor for that, so that's not something you want to do. Plus, if you select it, all the notes that you have after it are going to be deleted. Like, past the cursor here, all of those notes would disappear once I put in the new ones. So it's usually not a good idea to place them in manually like that. Then for the last thing that you can do with your notes after you have them selected, usually if you just play the PV right after you make notes, they're all going to line up at the bottom of the bottom of the screen in a straight line. But if you want them to be like across the screen in all the crazy directions, then you want to select the bottom option instead of the first one once you select the notes area. First two options right here will allow you, if I select the first one, will allow me to place them across the screen. The one at the right below that will allow me to change what direction they fly in from. And if I just select one of them, like the first one right here, where I can change the note position, and then I click on the L1 button, that will just allow me to swap very quickly between those two options. So if I'm placing a note, I just want to scroll over to any random note, press the circle button, and then use the D-pad to move it around on screen. Or if you want to place it very close to another note, you can hold down the square button while you move it, and it'll move very, very slowly in order to allow you to make more fine details. And then you can just let go and press it again, and it'll snap back to one of the main points. And then if I go ahead and press L1 to switch over to the direction that the note flies in from, and then I go ahead and press circle, it'll allow me to edit the direction. Now it's gray over here because the line is too long, like you have to give it ample area to fly off from the screen. So you can't have it like really long, basically. But then say it's too difficult to place the note using the left joystick because it's like you want it to be very precise, you can go ahead and press or hold down the square button and use the D-pad at left and right in order to place it on a very specific location. Now let's say that I move this note back up to the top here, and now I want all these notes right here in order to be placed up like that one is. Instead of doing it real slow and just moving them all up and then placing them like that, you can actually do it really fast by switching over to a note. And if you, once you select it where you can change where you want to fly in from, if you press the triangle button, it will fly in from the exact same direction that the note right before it did, so that you can have them all lined up pretty much precisely like they were before. So that allows you to make long rows of notes line up very quickly. That's how you can place them and choose where they fly in from. And now the final option for note placement, right below that, is default placement. Say you're like a really lazy producer, or you just don't want to place them manually, there are default settings that you can choose for notes that start like at the beginning of the bar, and then like this one here. If I select it, the notes are going to start from the bottom, they're going to go to the top of the screen, and then if I increase the length like by another bar from bar 12 to bar 13, then it will make them fall to the bottom of the screen, and I switch to the next one, it's going to start again from the beginning over in the bottom left corner again. Actually no, my bad, they start from where the last one ended over in the bottom right corner. It just goes back and forth between those 2 points. And then that also default places where they're going to fly in from, so you don't have to worry about like what direction the notes are going to fly in from off the screen. You can like make them into a circle in the middle, a really small closed circle, depending on which direction. You can do a lot basically with default placement. But that's just if you want to be lazy and you don't want to place them yourself. And that, I believe, is all you can do for the notes themselves. The option right below that, this is just easy stuff, basically. The last two options that you're going to have down here are for technical zones and the chance time. The very first option right below the notes is going to be where you want the chance time for your edit to be. Wherever you select it is where it's going to begin. So, say I go ahead and start like right here and select the option for the chance time. This is where the chance time is going to start, and then wherever I select it to end is where it's going to place the large star at that you have to flick in order to get your points and stuff. And then the option right below that just allows you to place technical zones, so you can start one wherever and then scroll over to wherever until to end, and then you just automatically have a technical zone there. And yeah, you can place them inside of the chance times too, which I think is a new thing for F that you couldn't do from the old one. And as far as edit making goes, that's pretty much all I can think of to show you. You have your player options, stages, cameras, markers, PV start time and end time, camera angles, different effects, and then the notes themselves. And that's pretty much all you need to know for making a PV. Obviously you have the other smaller options which I didn't really show you, but I don't think they're anything overly important. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and show you another edit real quickly for just to like demonstrate how complicated edits can get sometimes. Like usually most edits are not this complicated when it comes to BPMs, but some edits will be really difficult. So here's a quick look at what can happen sometimes when you have more than just one simple BPM change to worry about. Sometimes you'll have tricky patterns where it will slow down and then speed back up again, and if you don't know the BPM to it, then you kind of just have to play it by ear by messing around with the different BPM changes and shortening some bars. So it starts off here at 151, but then at bar 105 switches to 150, then down to 149, back up to 151, and then finally, right here, in order to speed up this part at 151, I changed this to 154 in order to get all the notes after it lined up correctly. So it seems a little complicated, but if you listen to it by ear, it plays right. Yeah, that's about it for the tutorial. I hope that you guys understood some of that and didn't just blabber on for over an hour and not make any sense. Thank you for watching.